So let me start off with saying that, in my opinion, you do not combat bourgeois nationalism with anti-patriotism. You combat bourgeois nationalism via building proletarian internationalism. I found that many people who feel differently than I do take on this kind of thought process that America is so much different than the other countries, and so we have to have a higher amount of disdain for it, or something like that. You get what I mean? And to me, this is American exceptionalism. A great piece of theory on this topic that's extremely short, you can find it on Marxist.org, is Lenin's On the National Pride of the Great Russians. To really answer your question, though, here, one is that if patriotism is the major tenet of your Marxism, then you are what Lenin describes as a socialist chauvinist. Okay, if you're a patriotic socialist, a Patsoc, then in my opinion, you're just a breath away from being a full-out Nazbol, Strasserite, and it won't be long before you go full Mussolini on us. Number two is that if anti-patriotism, if anti-Americanism is the major tenet of your Marxism, then you're probably an ultra-leftist. And I don't mean this to be a pejorative. I've spent most of my life climbing out of the ultra-leftist pit. And Theory and comrades and my wife have been helping to pull me out of that pit, putting their arms down and pulling me up my entire life. So I'm not trying to put you down, but that's what I feel. And three, and this will probably be one of the most unpopular things that I've ever said on TikTok, at least among comrades, is that it is totally acceptable to have a certain level, and healthy to have a certain level of patriotism in the American communist movement. But please do check out that piece by Lenin that I mentioned earlier. I think, especially as Americans, it relates very much to us. Read and listen to how he talks about Russia and about the crimes of the Russian Empire, the Tsar and so on in their past, and how familiar these crimes are to the American history. So this is a really fair question, but let's start with, how about being proud of the resistance movements to those events? The American Indian Movement, John Brown, and the Harper's Ferry Raid, of which Harriet Tubman was one of the organizers for that event. The Underground Railroad, the Civil War, where we crushed the South, the Confederacy. And I'm not talking about being under any illusions about the class nature of that war. I'm not talking about the bourgeoisie and what they had to gain in the northern industrialists. I'm talking about the working class people who signed up to fight and give their lives and risk their lives to fight slavery. This is a part also of American history. Not just this stuff. The resistance to those awful events. What about the militant labor movement of the early 1900s? I'm proud of the work and accomplishments of the Rainbow Coalition, and that's a part of American history. In the piece I mentioned, On the National Pride of the Great Russians, Lenin talks about the past crimes and current, at that time, crimes of Russia, right? He even talks about how Russia was known as the prison of peoples, and about how they went and they conquered other countries, and there was enslavement of people. And of course, different than here. I'm not saying it was the same, okay? But he talks about how they are not proud of this part of their past, but they're proud of the revolutionary movements and currents within their country and within the struggles to fight those past crimes. And that we definitely should be proud of within our own country. If you ever get a chance, check this book out. I wanted to show it to you because it has pictures of dozens, if not hundreds, of communist youth and adult summer camps that used to exist, and I think they're very inspiring. And it goes to show that the bourgeoisie do not have a monopoly on the history of this country. The history of this country is also the history of resistance to the bourgeois, to their cruelty, to their oppression. If infrared and has and being a Patsoc is your thing, you do you. Do whatever floats your boat. Just please, please do not anchor down near me. Do me a favor. Block me now so that we never have to interact on this app. Okay? That ideology is dangerous.